I can't tell you what's going to happen. And I never in my wildest years would I have pictured this being my life with him. But God would say, no, this one, I think you need to keep around, get to know, before you have any expectations of what's to come after that.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Relationships. I'm your host, Beatrice, and today I'm so excited to have a good friend of mine, Lindsay Hurlic-Salim, on with me today. And we're going to be gleaning from her 10 plus year marriage, her 19-year relationship, which is incredible. And I'm excited to have her on today because I feel like she has gone through a ton with her husband and having children and living in Los Angeles. And I think she is just a wealth of knowledge. So Lindsay, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, B, for having me. I'm really excited. As you mentioned, I've been married for some time and with my husband for a long time. And I really look forward to this conversation and just sharing knowledge and connecting further about relationships and marriage and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm so thankful because I think it's so valuable to have just perspective from other people who have gone through it, especially for us who are single, who are dating right now, and who want marriage and who want to be married. I think what I'm excited to talk about today is, to really make sure like are our expectations of marriage realistic and real? And I want to hear from people who are going through it and who are putting in the work and who do have a beautiful, flourishing marriage. But what does that take? I want us to go into marriage, I think, more prepared and have a better mindset of understanding what does it take to have a great marriage. So excited to get into that. But before we get into that, I would love to hear about what you're up to these days. I know you, not that long ago, launched Fresh Tribe LA, and you're opening up a cafe, which is so exciting.
I'm so excited.
And Lindsay is an LA native, which is amazing. I feel like that's very rare in LA to find. So, but tell us more about
good and authentic Angelina over here.
He is a good, authentic Angelina, and we love that. So tell us more about what you're doing and kind of your background and what you do for work and all that.
Yeah. So, me and B met through work, actually. We work in the special events and retail properties. But I stepped out in my entrepreneurial life and created a lifestyle brand as well as a juice and cafe bar with my family called Fresh Tribe LA. My husband is East African, and during COVID, we were really into wellness, of course, being what was happening in the world. And some of my family members are vegan. So we started to really press on fresh juicing, what's easy and accessible in the South LA communities to do. Yeah. And then we also have a family farm in Ethiopia. So we had a direct access to 100% authentic Ethiopian coffee, which is delicious. And with that, we started packaging our own coffee beans and shipping across the U.S. And we are opening up our first brick-and-mortar here in South Los Angeles in the Crenshaw district, which is a well-known and affluent African-American community. And with that, we're also a social enterprise. My husband comes from a very big family. I am also really into family. We have 3 kids together, and we are always doing activities, whether it's hiking, yoga, and we're bringing that to the community as well. We're providing like free wellness programming on a monthly basis to the community, and bringing that through our Fresh Tribe LA brand. So really excited to be opening this up. It's been a long time coming. As I mentioned, we started this in 2020, and to be getting ready to open up our own storefront is really exciting. And I look forward to what's to come for the brand overall.
I love that. And I commend you so much. It's so much work to open up any type of brick and mortar, especially especially in Los Angeles with permitting and all of that.
All that stuff, right?
I'm sure you've had to deal with it, but it is a tedious road. And so to get here to be almost opening I just want to give you props for that, because that is incredible. And to see you flourishing in that means it's awesome. We've had their brand at one of our events before. And so it's been fun to kind of like collaborate and have you part of like what we're doing. And so I love that. I really appreciate that. But we'll definitely put links below too, if you guys are interested in buying any of the coffee or the juices. We'll definitely link that as well. So you can get some some goods. But so to get into our conversation today, I'd love to hear, again, you've been married a decade, which is incredible. You've been with your
Yes,
husband for 19 years. That's like,
I cannot believe it. We celebrated, yep, Labor Day was our 10-year
wow.
wedding anniversary.
It's
Yes.
incredible.
So we are
Congratulations.
just, thank you very much. And it's so interesting what we did. We actually went back to Palm Springs where we got married,
Oh, I love that.
and we took the kids with us,
Mhm.
and we just had a little celebration, just us five, and it was just amazing. And we really just acknowledged the work that we put in for the
Love
past
that.
10 years and 19 years of being together. And it's a truly a blessing. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm in gratitude every single day when I wake up that I am blessed to have a partner and this family, and just trying to pour into my family and my marriage every day, more every day.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a daily thing. It's like the same way we
Yes,
show
it
up
is.
for work and for
Or,
friends and
mm-hmm.
all that. It's like sometimes we forget that you have to show up that same way in our relationships. Like you have to put
Yeah.
in that work. You have to like, show up with like your best, not your worst, And so
Yes.
um thank you for like even acknowledging that. I think that's beautiful and a great way to celebrate 10 years. So
Yeah.
how did you guys meet? Tell me, walk me through the story of how
Yeah.
you guys met. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, so in my past life, I was a singer and performer.
I love it.
And we met right probably about 20. So I was a junior in
Okay.
college. And just mutual friends, actually.
Mhm.
I wasn't really looking for anything. I was in and out of a relationship. I'm what you call like a serial monogamous. So
Okay.
I've always been with the people for like 3, 4 years or whatnot. And at that time, I was just in and out of a long-term
Mhm.
relationship that my previous ex-boyfriend had moved to Northern California for med school. And he happened to stop by while I was in dance rehearsal in
Mm.
Hollywood to visit one of my bandmates. And he was passing out flyers. So my husband does a lot of stuff in the nightlife and events as well.
Mhm.
And this is back in the day when you would have flyers to go
Yeah,
to
you would
parties.
literally
So
go pass them out to people.
I hope I'm not telling my age here, but and he was just he says it was love at first sight for him. Me, I was like, hey, I was focused on singing, going to school,
Mhm.
and getting my butt back home. So
Yeah.
we met and through a mutual friend, bandmate, and honestly, we clicked the moment that we met. He was just a really nice guy,
Mhm.
but again, I was in and out of relationship
Mhm.
already, wasn't looking for that. And I honestly thought he was talking to my friend, so I was like, "That's a no go for
Nope, I'm
me."
good.
Um,
I'll pass.
and yeah, we would run into each other just if we're at say similar events or if I hung out with that bandmate. And we would just high and by, high and
Mhm.
by, high and by. And to find out, he would always like be inviting my friend to events and whatnot,
Mhm.
and ask, "Is Lindsay going to be there? Is Lindsay going to be there?" And she would say yes, just so she can get into the events for free. But I never showed up.
He's like, "Where is this woman? When is she coming?"
Where is this? Okay, I'm trying to find her. And then I think one day we again just happened to connect and be
Mhm.
hanging out. And this is in the days of the what were they called? The sidekicks,
Oh,
right? Oh,
yes.
and he was like, "Can I get your AIM name?" And
Oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh, I love this so much.
"Sure, whatever." And I think the next day, he asked me out on a date. And I was very surprised. So I'm like, "You're talking to my friend. I'm
Oh,
so
that's
not
so
interested in
funny.
you." And I'm a very transparent and person. And so
Mhm.
I asked my friend, I'm like, "Aren't you talking to this guy?" And she's like, "No, I'm not." Little to find out, she wished she was. But
Oh.
I agreed to go on the date, which ended up being it ended on a good note, but it started off really bad. He was about 2 hours late.
2 hours?
Can you
And
believe
you,
it? And I still went on it. I still went on the
how are you
date.
two
I did.
hours late? Like,
It was one thing after he was communicating through it, and I'm
Mhm.
just like, okay, this car situation, whatever. And I don't know. And usually I'm such a person that like forget about
Yeah,
it.
you're like,
But
nah.
for some reason I had no plans. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah,
And
that's funny.
little did I know, we went out to a Greek restaurant over in Santa Monica, and the conversation was so good. We closed up this place. We were the last ones to leave. We then left to the beach to talk more, and he took me home. And I swear, after that, we were together. It was just like
It just happened.
I
Yeah.
would have never expected it. We say to this day, like I just never knew. But what I did know was that he was one of the sweetest,
Mhm.
smartest, funniest, kindest people I've ever met. And I was like, I don't know where this might go, but I just know that I like this guy, and I
Mhm.
don't really like a lot of people.
I get you.
So I was like, I just want to be friends with them.
Yeah.
Like, but before you knew it, it was just boom. We were
Wow.
spending every single day with each other. And he's like, I knew it. I knew it from the moment I met you. And I'm like, oh, I'm glad you did. And you definitely made it happen. But, and that was again 19 years ago.
Wow.
um I think that to this day he is, I mean, he's my best friend.
Mhm.
I laugh, I cry, I'm probably my most vulnerable with him, and that's what I knew being with him back then that is just grown now. And it's amazing to have found someone that is equally yoked and who I actually enjoy
Mhm.
being around and with and conversing with on a daily basis. I think is most important. And that was it. I mean, of course there was some bumps in the road along the way. We've
Yeah.
been together a long time. We've grown
I'm sure.
tremendously from being 2021 to again 40 41, and we have evolved into better versions of ourselves.
Mm.
But it has been an amazing ride.
Mm.
I will say that. And time flies when you're having fun, for sure. And it's been one of the best, I think, like teaching relationships about
Yeah.
myself, about other people, about how I want my relationships to be. So, um, yeah, that's kind of where we are today with now 3 kids.
Yes, I know, you just had a little girl and she's adorable. Oh
Yes,
my goodness.
you might hear in the background. She's
Cutest
just
kiddos.
playing right now.
I love it.
Um,
So, question,
so
so for those of us, like, who are single, what are,
mhm,
like, what were those qualities then that you realized were so maybe that or that you didn't realize were so important then that you now
mhm.
look back and be like, this is what makes a great relationship? Like, what were those initial qualities in him that you saw that you were like, wow, this is amazing, that you maybe look back on now and be like, yeah, those were the things? I know you mentioned like he's your best friend and all that, but like, how
Mhm.
important are those things?
I think I always say the one of the main reasons that I think we've been able to stick together for so long
Mhm.
and again have a successful marriage is at the end of the day we are friends.
Mm.
I didn't come into that relationship thinking that could be my potential husband, that could be
Mhm.
my potential boyfriend, even the lust factor,
Mhm.
it was more of deeply rooted. This person
Mhm.
is a person that I like.
Mhm.
I have a funny thing I tell my husband. I'm like, when I'm mad at him, it's like, I love you, but I do not like you right now. Right? But I think again, it's so important to be friends
Mhm.
before anything
Mm.
else. And I think that was the quality that again has just resonated throughout all our whole
Mm.
relationship
Yeah.
is as a friend level, I want the best for you. I want you to be the best that you can be and bring your best foot to this relationship.
Mm.
And he expects the same from me, and that's just because of us liking each other as human beings. You know, And I think, you know, when you get caught up in a relationship at first, you're always thinking, well, what could this be?
Mm-hmm.
What do I
Get ahead.
want this
Mm-hmm.
to be? Right. And again, it was such a natural thing that I didn't have the pressure of where is this leading?
Mm-hmm.
What are we becoming? What's happening here?
Mm-hmm.
I felt that he was showing through action whatever this was.
Mm-hmm.
It felt good
Yeah.
and it made me happy. So yeah, I would say the biggest quality is the heart. I believe it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not believe it or not, because I think that's what we all strive to have. You know, wonderful partners with beautiful hearts. But that has been the biggest quality from the get go that has really made this relationship a success, and
Yeah.
a quality that has sticked. He's just has an amazing heart and is a beautiful person.
I love that. I think the more couples that I talk to that are in great marriages,
Mm-hmm.
they all say at the beginning, they all like, I think every single one has been like, we were friends. Like we actually like
Mm-hmm.
each other. We, so when you're going through hard things, it's like, it's your friend that you're going through with it. It's not the
Right.
person that you're like, who are you? I don't even know who you are. Or I don't even like you. Like you wake up
Mm-hmm.
one day and I think all the lust and the excitement and the honeymoon fades away. And I think at the
Yes.
core, you are left with the friendship. And I think that's like, I think that's so important, especially for us who are like looking for partners and are dating out there. I think that's such a important key is like, are you friends with this person? Like sometimes in the
Mm-hmm.
past I've dated people and I've been like, I don't think I would be friends with you if in real like if we weren't dating. Like I think about that. I'm like, would I
Right.
want to hang out with you? Would I want you in
Right.
my friend circle? Would I, and there's been times when I'm like, no, I would literally not be friends with you. Like you would not be someone I would choose. But
Just like,
yeah,
yeah.
and I think that that's such a great perspective and it's such a great question for us to ask as we're dating. It's like, wait, are you someone I want to be friends with? Is this growing into a beautiful friendship? Not only,
Mm-hmm.
a romantic relationship, because that kind of gets added
Yeah.
on top, but is this
Mm-hmm.
someone like I actually want to be friends with and I actually enjoy their company and because I think
Conversation. Yeah.
exactly. Like you think about the everyday living life together. It's grocery shopping, it's planning kids, days and going to soccer games and all those things. It's so much of that too. And at the end of the night when the kids go to bed, it's like, well, if you don't like the person, what are you talking about? Are you watching shows together? Like, what is the relationship after that? So
After that, right.
I
And I think communication is also, I mean, key in having, being able to be vulnerable, open
mhm,
conversations, which I think is something that I have definitely learned in this
mm,
relationship. Vulnerability is not a thing that I am very open to
mm,
with a lot of people, and that's just how I grew up.
mhm,
And it's kind of stick with me. I have gone through much of therapy to
mhm.
get through
We
that.
love therapy.
Um, I know, love it, recommend it, and
Mhm,
I would say you bringing that up is another key factor into what has really helped our relationship. I would say within the first year of our marriage,
mhm.
first year and a half, we started therapy.
It's great.
It To give you a little bit even more insight into my marriage, I had our first son. Well, we got engaged, found out I was pregnant,
Mm.
and so I had my son, and also bought a house in the first year of our
Oh my
marriage.
gosh, that is
So you can only
Whew,
imagine what life was like in the first 2 to 3 years
a
of
lot.
it. It was really like
Mhm,
touch and go. And we got into therapy because at the end of the day, and again, I didn't go into therapy like fix my marriage. I
yeah.
wanted to fix my friendship with this
Mm,
person.
yeah.
Yeah. So and co-parent with them. Like
Mhm,
I don't know what's gonna happen, but I just know that I need to get back to liking this person as
mhm.
my friend, and it was amazing.
Mm,
It was the first time my husband's ever been in therapy,
mm,
and it had such a wonderful impact in opening up the lines of communication,
mm,
working on our vulnerability, uh, our trust, and also how we talk to each other. I
mm,
mean, I know how I like to be communicated with. I know that how I communicate, but that doesn't necessarily work for him at
Mm-hmm.
times. And it just definitely helped us to really bind our
Mm-hmm.
relationship, and I highly recommend it for uh those, in the first years of marriage, even prior to marriage, getting into couples therapy. Not to say like you have issues to work through,
Mm-hmm.
but it will only benefit you. You will reach some hard subjects, but it will teach you how to get through,
Yeah.
process, communicate those hard subjects. So I'd say therapy is also has been very beneficial for my marriage.
I love that. I think it's so important. I think it's important individually before you get into a
Hmm.
relationship, but also while you're in it. I think it's so important. I'm a big advocate for it. And I know sometimes it's kind of an iffy thing, in certain Christian
Yeah.
communities, they're like, I don't know about it, but I really do believe it. Like having a third party, someone who isn't biased to be there to help you, to also
Hmm.
point out some of the things in your life that you're like, oh, I
Hmm.
didn't even realize I show up that way, or I'm acting this
Yeah.
way, or
Yeah.
why I'm acting this way, and all of that. So
Yeah.
think it's amazing. I'm curious too, how did you guys, I think you've been together, what, let's just say 20 years. That's an incredible
Hmm.
amount of time. And,
Hmm.
10 years into that, you get married. And at that point, you start learning how to better communicate and all that. How,
Right.
how do
Hmm.
you like continue to grow together? Right. Because I think what we see a lot too is people tend to grow apart and then they get to a point where they're like, oh, I don't even know who you are anymore. But what do you feel
Right.
has helped you two kind of continue to grow together versus apart?
Um, I think again, while in therapy, we learned our communication styles
Mm-hmm.
and how we like to broach conversations. And what I took away is that I am going to have to take the lead in having the hard conversations.
Mm-hmm.
That's my role in this marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is what it is. And I was having a hard time because I'm like, no, why should I do this?
Yeah.
Why should I? Why should I? Why should I? But it's not a matter of you're doing this, you're doing that. It's a matter of, being intentional.
Mm.
You want this to work, you love this person, so you're going to have to lead these heavy, hard conversations. And so, it's not something I'm excel at all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but I am the type of person where I can't hold it in. It
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't manifest
Yeah.
well. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I would say again, and having the conversations, especially when you feel, this doesn't feel right to me. It might be okay for you, but it doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah.
And I don't need you to agree with me. I just need you to hear me and understand and say, okay, I understand that. And I think that's huge, and that I've taken the lead in making sure those conversations are being had. But also, it's a constant state of exercising that muscle.
Mm.
If we're not intentional with communicating, with spending time with each other one on one, we feel the energy shift
Mm-hmm.
instantly,
Mm.
instantly, and therefore it takes both of us putting in the effort. I might have had a harder week at work, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm not able to give that extra energy towards the marriage this week.
Mm-hmm.
We can't succeed at everything on an everyday basis. And I
Mm.
think
Yeah.
my husband has been a great partner in that. He's like, oh, I see that you just don't have the capacity here, so I'm going to make up for it
Mm,
here.
I love that.
I think we've definitely grown continuously every year of just being partners. There are no specific roles
Mm-hmm.
in this marriage. It's like we have to compliment when we need to compliment. We have to step up here when this person's lacking here, and it's a constant balance. It's a
Mm.
constant balance for sure.
I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. That's such a beautiful picture of what like the work looks like on a daily
Hmm.
basis. And I think it's a beautiful picture of what partnership is. It's not always going to be like, well, I always do this and you always do this. For some marriages, that actually does work, right? Very
Yeah.
specific roles in some marriages works, and I think it's like you have to figure out what that is. For others, with maybe moving parts, two people working, throwing kids in the
Hmm.
play, like sticking to very specific roles like doesn't work, and it's like
Right.
you kind of have to pick up where the other leaves off. And there's like Brene Brown talks about this a ton, where her and her
Mm.
husband do it too, where they're like they get home and they're like, I'm at 20%, and they're like, I'm at
Right.
50, and you just kind of have to balance, like, where are you, where am I,
Hmm.
and like what choices can we make to like help each other out, or to kind of be there. If, like you said, like if someone's having a harder time, then it's like you kind of have to step up versus just having the expectation that like, well, why are you having a hard
Mm-hmm.
day? Or the expectation of like, well, you didn't come home and do what you normally do. Because life
Mm-hmm.
life is all over the place, right? It's like maybe you came home and like you said, you had a hard day and you like, I can't make dinner tonight, so I'm
I
gonna need
can
you to
do it,
step
right?
up, or the kids went crazy at school, or you had to like, there's so like, I feel like life always throws curveballs, and I think being able to be
Yeah. When you
flexible.
just get the rhythm of things,
Yeah.
get
Get
ready
ready.
because it's about to change up and being flexible.
Yeah.
I used to be a big person on control.
Mhm.
I needed control. So I'll
Yes,
do
I
this.
feel that.
I'll do this. I'll do this. I'll do this. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. But really just again relinquishing that
Mm.
control, being flexible and picking my battles.
Mhm.
Like it's all about picking your battles.
Yeah.
Everything is not as important as it might feel in that moment,
Yeah.
too. Like, okay, let me just take my 10-second count
Mhm.
and we can move on. But yeah, being flexible is definitely needed in a marriage, especially for me. And it's not cookie cutter. Like you
Mhm.
said, one thing might work for someone else's marriage
Mhm.
that does not work for yours. And what I learned every year, every day is that not just my marriage, but life is going to look the way I want it to look.
Mhm.
This works for me,
Yeah.
and not worried about what the perception of it might look like. Because again, it's not cookie cutter. There's not one way of living life
Mhm.
to being in a relationship. Um, so I think that's important to just be flexible and do what works for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
think it's like I said, it's so different for everybody, and I think there's like we can have some general rules for relationship, but you really have to understand your person. You're married to different people,
Hmm.
are different, and each marriage has it might look different for some people, right? Some people want, if they have kids, they want to be involved in everything. Other people are like, we don't want to be involved in everything, So it's you have to choose what makes sense for your family, and I think that's really
Yes.
important, not to look at everybody around. Well, why do they have that? Why do they? I think it's so easy to do that, but it's just
Hmm.
not, it's not healthy.
Yeah,
What do you
sure.
feel like? Because I always feel like marriage is such a mirror because you're so intimately connected with somebody. If you don't
Hmm.
mind sharing, what do you feel like were some things that kind of came up for you that you were like, oh, I did not know that about myself, or like, or moments where you were just sort of like, oh, that has to change, or I've got to work on this, or like, what were those things
Yeah.
looking for you internally that like, whatever you feel comfortable sharing,
Yeah.
that really were like kind of eye openings. I feel like when you're in relationship, even when I'm not married, when I'm in relationship, that's when all these things come up. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know I was like that. Or, oh my God, these
Hmm.
things that I thought I worked through that I was like, oh, I'm healed
Hmm.
from that. I date someone. I'm
Yeah.
like, no, I'm not.
Yep.
Still there. So yeah.
A lot of things, and a lot of things are from my upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
Of who my parents are and my environment, my living environment. That was really influential, but I didn't know how influential. Like I saw it, like okay, but that's not going to happen to
Mm-hmm.
me. That's not what I'm going to do. I'm not going to be my mother in this instance, but sure enough, it did. Like I told you, my issue with control,
Mm-hmm.
and having to work with someone else, my partner, to work together and not control every aspect of everything,
Yeah.
and being okay with the way someone else does
Mm-hmm.
something.
Yeah.
That maybe I wouldn't do it, but it doesn't mean it's the wrong way.
Yeah.
That uh, I was, believe it or not believe it or not, but I was not very interested in marriage. I
Mm.
That was not something that I strived for in any of my relationships, even in this one. It wasn't like, yes, we're going to get married. It
Mm-hmm.
was more like, okay, I'm ready to have kids and I'm ready to have a house.
Mm-hmm.
So you can either, we can be partners. It doesn't matter, but this is what I'm going to do. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's because I came from my parents' divorce at 3.
Oh
I don't
wow.
even
Yeah.
remember them together. My father was married 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
My father, I saw him not be faithful to his partners.
Mm.
So I was a big advocate, like, that doesn't mean anything. Marriage does not mean anything.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough.
And yeah, and I don't and and I was like, I'm not going to be vulnerable enough for
Mm,
if that to happen to me, that it will hurt me. So I think my vulnerability was something that was a mirror of like, no, you can be vulnerable with something, with someone. And not only that, don't be scared to be vulnerable. Yes, you might get hurt, but that is life.
mhm.
Like, and
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing to be vulnerable. I'm still learning that
Mhm.
it's a beautiful thing to be who you are, to wear your heart on your sleeve. Because I feel like as a kid I was very much hard on my sleeve, but my parents weren't like that. They were
Yeah.
very independent, suck it up, move on.
Yeah.
We don't have, it wasn't a softness going
Yeah.
on for me in
I
life.
feel that. My
Right.
same.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, and therapy and my husband showed me that, you don't have to have your guard up all the time.
Mm,
Like, you don't,
I get that.
have to, you're in a safe space. And this is something again that I work on every day.
Yeah.
Some days are better than others. Um, so yeah, I think definitely trust and vulnerability was something that my husband showed me, that I can let my guard down. It's okay. It's okay to have feelings. Like now,
Mhm.
I cry. I can cry
Oh.
when I want, how I want, without feeling like I shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Um, so, it's little things, character traits like that, was a defense mechanism that really helped me be a strong, resilient person.
Mhm.
But with your partner, you don't have to have that. You don't need that.
Yeah.
You need it in certain
Yeah.
situations, but with my partner, I should be free to be my authentic, vulnerable, loving
Mhm.
self, so that's
Yeah.
definitely the mirror that's been shown to me.
Yeah, it's beautiful to see that, and to, because I think sometimes we look at those traits and we think, oh, they're terrible, or it's like, no, but
Mhm.
they also helped us get to where we were. They like protected
Right,
us in many situations, right? They kept
right.
us, because I'm very similar. I was very, I'm still am a lot of the time more walled up. I like my space. I don't
Mhm,
like people to come into my space too often. I'm very
mhm.
particular about who I let in, but people don't realize that, because on the outside, I'm super friendly, I'm bubbly, I'm like, I talk to everybody. That's also like something I
That's
learned
a
as a
part of you.
kid.
That's also part of you,
Yeah.
right?
Like, I am very friendly, but then there's only a few that I'll let really get close and let in. So I think that's
Mhm.
something for me that
Right
I
there.
know I will struggle with, like in, as people get close, I struggle with that even in dating. When someone tries to get close too
Mhm.
fast, I'm like, whoa, hold on. What are you doing? Like,
What's going on here?
I never
Uh-huh.
let you get that close. But
Absolutely.
it's such a, I think I want to note for people not to get so discouraged in it, because I think we've built this up over so much time.
Mhm.
And it's like a daily thing you have to kind of work through, and it's an acknowledgement. And
Mhm.
some days you're great, and some days that part of you comes out so strong and you're like, whoa,
Mhm.
hold up, but
Right.
it is such a, it's how we were wired. And but yeah, I think marriage and relationships allows us to work through those things. So I think that's really, really
Right.
beautiful. And it doesn't just,
And the person,
yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, it doesn't go away like that because we want it
No.
to.
Right. And the person, the partner that choose, needs to understand that,
Hmm.
and give you grace in that, and saying
Absolutely.
like, I know these are, one, not reflective of me as a
Yeah.
person. For your partner, it's more things that you have to process, and I'm gonna let you process that,
Yeah.
and I'll be right here. I'll,
Yeah.
I'll still be right here. Let me know when you're done.
Yeah. I feel like marriage, like, you have to extend grace. Like, I just
Oh.
feel like, oh my gosh, otherwise it's just going to be battle after battle. It's like there's got to be grace, communication with it also,
Hmm.
and accountability, right?
Hmm. Yes, I'm learning. So to this day, I'm learning to say I'm sorry.
Hmm. That's hard.
And taking accountability. And I'm like, it's so funny because it wasn't until recently, I think it was an interaction with my mother and I, and I'm like, oh, that's where I get not saying sorry
Mm.
from. Because it's not like, oh, I'm wrong. Okay. It's like, move on to the next subject. And no, it's like, take the time to say, I'm sorry, my bad. like, and I'm learning that, like,
Mhm.
and I tell my husband, I'm like, oh, that's where I got it from. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not, I don't say it as often. So accountability is huge, and
Mhm.
it's accountability is having awareness, self-awareness
Oh
that,
my
like,
god.
I effed up, or I have things to work on, and I think that's very important in a marriage, both of you guys, to have a level of a sense of self-awareness, of knowing, this is my shit I have to work on,
Mhm.
this is our shit that we have to work on, and
Yeah.
this is your shit. Sorry for
No, no, it's so
saying
it's
that.
like, I think self-awareness is one of the most underrated traits to look for in a partner. Like, I don't even think
Hmm.
it's on most people's list, but it
No.
is so it's more important than a lot of other ones, because that if they don't go into a relationship with self-awareness, or at least develop it while they're in the relationship, it's like
Hmm.
trying to get them to be accountable, and you don't want to try to get someone to be accountable, they just need to be
No.
accountable. But it's like,
Exactly.
there's so much things that come up that, like, a simple, "Hey, I'm sorry. I'm recognizing this is why I'm acting this way." Like, that goes
Hmm.
such a long way to diffuse arguments and to diffuse that. And it helps with repair. Like, how do you repair after an argument? How do you both have to be
Yeah.
pretty self-aware to be able to come back together and say, whoever's, "Hey, my bad.
I
This
take
was."
ownership in
Yeah.
this, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
but you made me feel this way, and then I take ownership in this, but you also made me feel this way. Like, being able to have that is so vital in relationships. And those are
Yep.
traits that we can practice in our singleness. Like, we can practice
Hmm.
self-awareness and starting to get, like, more curious about, why do I react that way,
Hmm.
um and there's a lot of ways
I'm
for.
being triggered. Why am I being
Yep.
triggered? Like, and again, I'm thankful for therapy and
Yeah.
in helping to assist with that self awareness. I mean, for men, I think that therapy is a scary thing because
Mhm.
it makes them get a little bit more internal
Yeah.
and reflective
Yeah.
of certain things that I don't think that, not to generalize
Mhm.
men, but is a skill set that they necessarily use
Mhm.
often. But therapy definitely helped us to build our self awareness and understanding, well, what am I going to take ownership in?
Mhm.
How am I adding to this problem? Because a lot of times, it could be a whole gaslight situation with women, where it's like, no, I don't know why you're feeling that way. I don't
Mhm.
know what, da, da, da. But you got to take ownership in saying, okay, I know this might trigger you, and I take ownership in doing that and be able to resolve it. You can't resolve it if you're not self aware of it,
No. No,
So
because then you get defensive, and that doesn't really go
that
anywhere.
doesn't help
No.
anything. It's a matter of finding fault, and that's another thing that I think, in marriage and learning from therapy, it's not a matter of finding fault.
Mm.
It's a matter of resolution, just resolving, and how we move on to the next thing, because we can point fingers all day long, but really, what does it do? It's not helping to continue to blame someone. So it's more about finding resolution than finding fault.
Yeah, and even, John Gottman, he's a really great psychologist. Him and his wife have the Gottman Institute, and they talk about that
Hmm.
being, repair after an argument, or just repair after conflict,
Hmm.
being the number one indicator of divorce. So how you repair
Hmm.
conflict,
From that.
not friendships,
Hmm.
not anything else. It's like, that is the number one indicator of if someone will last in a marriage. It's that trait, and it's I just think it's such an important thing to practice and to continue to learn and grow
Yeah.
and in relationships and marriage and all that, because I think you're going to have, like, even with the perfect person or the right person, I feel like you're going to have arguments, you're going to
Yeah.
have disagreements, like, you're going to have
Yep.
days that you want to snap and days where you're in a bad mood.
Yep. And once you have kids involved and mortgages
Yeah.
involved and schedules involved, it's like things are going to fall through the cracks. But again, it's not a matter of fault. It's a matter of resolving and moving on and figuring, how do we prevent this from happening again?
Yeah.
So,
So speaking of kids, how have kids totally changed? I mean, I know you got married and had a kid at the same time, but
yes.
I mean, you guys were in a relationship prior to that, but how did
Yes.
having children really impact your marriage?
So yes. So I got engaged in a January. It was on New Year's Eve. I found I was pregnant in February. By that time, I had picked out my dress,
Oh
the
my
wedding venue.
gosh.
Like, I mean, because we've been together almost 10 years. Like, I I know what we're doing here. But it was to have such, wonderful things happening. It was definitely the scariest. And the biggest thing is because it was going to change things. It was going to change
Yeah.
me as a person. It was going to change the dynamic of our relationship,
Yeah.
me and my husband's relationship. It was going to call for us to mature.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
mean, I had my first child at 30. And even then I was like, whoa, I'm way too young. Like, what? And to be, selfless.
Mhm.
And every time I find out I'm expecting, I have a huge anxiety because anytime you add an additional element to an environment, it's going to cause stress,
Mhm.
whether it's a positive stress, negative
Yeah.
stress, all that. And I think it's impacted our relationship in that we have to do more than just we have to do even more to
Mhm.
make sure we're communicating. We have to be very intentional with our time, and that's our time with each other, with the
Yeah.
family, and connecting, especially. And also not losing ourselves being parents.
Mm.
At the end
Yeah.
of the day, we are two individuals that both have our own passions, also have to connect because if me and him aren't connected, our family's not going to
Mhm.
do well. We are the pillars of our family. And so it definitely changes the dynamic. It does add a stress, but at the same time, it works the muscles that you need to work even
Mhm.
more, and you have to be intentional and stay focused on, again, I think in my family, in my relationship, it's God,
Mhm.
it's me and my husband, and it's our kids. It's not our kids, then my husband, or anything like that, because the kids will be gone and we will still be with each other
Yeah,
and want to be with
absolutely.
each other. And so understanding, but at the same time, that family, us five, are the priority in everything else, and the
Yes.
outside world.
Yeah.
So I think, we just have to constantly remind that order of our family and be intentional in everything that we do to make sure that we stay happy, we stay
Mhm.
connected, and also kids have made our life 10 times funner. I'm not gonna
Oh,
lie.
I love that.
I mean, it's wonderful when you make, these little human beings out of love, and to see them come into their own personality, and also see bits of yourselves in
Yeah, that's
them.
so sweet.
Yes. But it also is, another task, another job that you have to do. I mean, I have a soon to be 11-year-old. So
Crazy.
going into preteens, I have a 5-year-old and a 7-month-old. And, we are having so much fun. We have to laugh, as well as being challenged so much, and especially our like 11-year-old, and becoming like a preteen and socializing
Oh
and
my gosh.
starting his own outside world in school, and teaching him the lessons and values that he needs to have. It teaches us a lot about ourselves and
Yeah.
our values. So, again, it's the most exhausting thing, but it's so fun.
I love that.
And it's definitely a lot of work, but we try to make it, again, as fun as possible.
I love that.
Between my husband and I, we spend many of nights laughing or really having deep dive discussions about, well, what's the lesson that we need to make sure our son is learning in this situation at school, and all that, and how will we do it versus how our
Mhm.
son would do it, or our kids would do it, because they're different personalities from us. So, it's been a wild ride, but I love it.
I love that you guys even, like, have those conversations. It's such a
Mhm.
like, a testament to how connected you guys are, you know? Like, you're actually
Mhm.
communicating, even talking about, well, how are we teaching this lesson? Not just the assumption of,
Mhm.
like, well, this is how we would teach it, you know? And I think a lot of people go into marriage with all these assumptions. Well, that's just how I would do it. That's how
Right.
I would do it. Well, well, how do you
Well,
guys,
you don't know until you're in it.
right? It's like, how do you do it together? Or how do you,
Hmm.
because they might have a different perspective and you might have a different perspective. And
Right.
so I think that
And
that's,
that's another thing.
yeah.
That's another thing of that. Again, sometimes my husband and I have different perspectives,
Hmm.
and you also have a male raising a son,
Hmm.
and me being the mom, and so I'm always going to be a little softer in this situation, in certain situations, and so that's another thing of like, okay, these are the skills that I have
Hmm.
in, raising our kids, and I'm going to lean into that,
Mm.
and he's going to lean into his. Like, it might not be overall, we have the same values and we
Yeah.
know how we want to raise our kids, but how we communicate that and or the lessons that need to be
Hmm.
learned in those situations, I might see it one way and he might see it the other. But our points get across,
Yeah.
and we let each person have that conversation with our kids of, okay, and this would happen, this is what needs to be done and whatnot. And sometimes there's a bit of friction of like, oh, I think that that was a little too harsh, or I
Hmm.
think that there was other lessons that might have been more important in that. But again, you can still come back around and still teach those lessons or still have those conversations, and I think, again, being flexible of how one person parents versus it being how I parent, there's little
Hmm.
differences, but fundamentally, at least we're on the same page.
Yeah. I love that. I think that that's so, like, I look at that, I'm like, that's so important. That's so important having those
Hmm.
conversations. What would you like? I'm sure you have single girlfriends. What
Hmm.
do you feel like are like lessons you would want to like impart on people who are not married, who desire to be married, and who are in the
Hmm.
dating world,
Hmm.
knowing all that knowing the 10 years of marriage, the 20-year relationship, knowing all that what are some lessons that you or just insights you want to share to people who are dating?
I
She's like, where do I start?
again, for me, I know I have girlfriends that date and constantly have the expectation of like, this might be the one, this might be, I
Every
want to be
guy.
married, right? And it's to every guy, and it's like, but that's just not, the probability is not there for it to be
Yeah.
every guy. So I think they put more of the physical and lusting before really wanting to get to know the person.
Mm.
So I would say time is the testament of true love. My father always told me that, and I would take my time to, again, be friends with someone first and enjoy their company and conversation and
Mhm.
learn their values, to not rush into anything, because anything rushed into, I think, is not going to be in for the long haul.
Mm.
Unless, I also still believe that God puts messages through you where it's like, that's the one.
Mhm.
That's the one, so you have to listen to that. And intuition is, not intuition, but your gut, your gut feeling about something, whether it's right, whether it feels good, it doesn't feel good. I think women in particular need to go with that.
Mm.
Like, if something does not feel good to you, you don't know what it is, everything seems picture perfect, go with that.
Mhm. I agree.
Believe it. That's God speaking to you, both in the positive and the negative. And so I think that's really important, to trust yourself
Mhm.
and to build a friendship with over time,
Mm.
in the dating world. Again, it's been a long time since I dated. I was never a person that like really liked to date, because it was always a hit or miss whether I like even wanted to have a conversation with you. So,
Yeah.
so
You're
it's
like,
like,
"Mm."
but at the same time, again, the first time went out on a date with my husband, it wasn't the picture perfect situation, but something in me was just saying, "Oh, this is he's a good one. You need
Mhm.
to just keep him around."
Mhm.
I can't tell you what's going to happen, and I never in my wildest years would I have pictured this being my life with him, but God was saying, no, this one, I think you need to keep around, get to know,
Mhm.
enjoy your time with them, enjoy the time with the person
Yeah.
first, before you have any expectations of what's to come after that. And I know that that's easier said than done,
Mhm.
you know. Um, But again, time is the true testament of love. So take your time. Take your time.
I totally agree. I just think it's so wise. Like I really do. And it's hard because we want to rush in because we're
Hmm.
getting older or this or that, or it's
Yeah.
lust, or it's like all these fireworks and all this, but
Yeah.
I'm finding the culprit in our society, I think, is just really unrealistic expectations.
Hmm.
And I think that's keeping us from people that could be really good for us, I think we go
Hmm.
in with these crazy expectations. So it's good to hear that from someone, who you're like, I'm in it, I'm doing it, and here's what
Hmm.
the more and more I hear it, it's like it really is down to friendship. Like it's the people who have lasted and are in a relationship for a long period of time. I feel like that's
Yeah.
such a key component. So,
Yeah. And I think we're constantly evolving. So it's
mhm.
like, we have, don't get me wrong. I think I definitely have expectations of my husband, and I
Yeah.
had expectations being with him, but fundamentally it was a matter of, can I trust
Hmm.
you? You know, what else? I expect you to be, a good person to me and
Yeah.
your family. Like,
Those are like
practical,
realistic
right?
expectations. And usually those are like
Right.
communicated. So I don't want people to think that,
Yes.
I'm saying expectations are bad. Expectations are not, but they need to be
Right.
communicated and they need to be with
Yes.
reason.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, and I think communicating, like I said,
mhm.
because you don't want these expectations, and it's like, well, duh, don't you know, like, this is
Like
what you're
you,
supposed to do?
exactly. And I
Like,
think that's the
no,
culprit. Yeah.
no, I don't know that. And at least if I know, and like, it, it's like, at least if I know what your expectations are, I can be transparent and say I can't meet those,
Hmm.
or I get what you're saying, but how about this? Um, so yeah, I think that also people think that the person that you married is not going to change. Like, I married you, I love you, this is who
Hmm.
you're going to be, but we change constantly,
Oh,
constantly, and we have to give each other grace and understanding, like, what worked then might not work now,
hmm.
and
Yeah.
communicating that and changing your expectations happens.
Hmm.
So it's like, you can't have these just list of, this is all that I want, and not be able to be flexible, or not know that you might change that expectation. You
Hmm.
might not want that anymore in
Yeah.
a year or 2 years, or whatever the case may be. So um yeah, I think, and I will say again, like me, I had the expectation of marriage, in all honesty, and I think because of my expectations not being the most positive
Hmm.
of what marriage is, and what people do in marriage, from what I've seen around me and my parents and whatnot, I kind of like having the expectations. Oh, he's going to cheat on me. Oh, he's
Hmm.
going to do this. It manifested itself. It literally did. Your thoughts are powerful. And that's what I was constantly thinking in marriage. This is what they do. This is what they do. This is
Hmm.
what they do. And sure enough, I keep on focusing on those things, and you'll find a way to
Hmm.
justify your expectations,
Hmm.
right? So even me, I had to, when I went into therapy, it was like, no, every marriage is not the same. I
Hmm.
understand that's what you had experienced, but you got to make your marriage what you want it to be. You
Yeah.
have to make your relationship what you want it to be. So yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
if that took us off subject, but
No, no, no. I think that's great. I think it's like marriage, you're marrying the person for who they are today, and it's
hmm,
a promise to love them for who they become in the future.
right,
It's a future
exactly.
promise. We don't know. There's a beautiful quote that Tim Keller wrote in one of his books. He's like, "You will never marry the right person because the right person will constantly evolve. Like they'll always be changing.
Hmm.
The right person you have today, they're going to grow in 10 years. They're going to grow in 20
Yep.
years. They're going to evolve. They're going to become. They might have different interests. They might become a better version of themselves. They're going to,
Hmm.
and so
And that's what you want. You want them to become better versions. You want them to grow. Like, I want to grow with you, experience this vast life with you.
yeah.
Like, so, why have a set expectations on someone that is a human being, and you evolve, they evolved, and things
Exactly.
change constantly.
Yeah, and it's communicating, it's evolving together, and I think that's the key. It's
Mm-hmm.
being connected, it's being intentional together
Mm-hmm.
and growing together and supporting each other's dreams and
Yeah.
building that life together. I think because so easily you can start to grow like this and you start to grow apart because you're not communicating. You're kind of living in your own world. You're not growing, you're not supporting each other. You're not, you
Yeah.
know, so I think that's I thank you so much for sharing all this because I think this is going to be really helpful for a lot of people and just getting
Mm-hmm.
your wisdom and your insight into, kind of the reality of marriage. And it's beautiful.
Right.
I thank
It
you for
is.
it's beautiful, but it's very intentional and it can be very
Mm-hmm.
difficult if we're unwilling to compromise, if we're unwilling to grow, if we're unwilling to see ourselves for who we really are. I think that
Mm-hmm.
is even more difficult. So I thank you so much. I really, really do. I'm
Of
so privileged to have you on here today. And to
No,
be able
thank
to have these
you.
conversations. This is why I started this. I wanted to hear from others and learn. I always like I hope people know like when I'm doing these interviews, like I get so much out of them. Like I'm not an expert in
Mm-hmm.
dating, I'm not an expert in marriage, but like when I have people on and I learn from them, I'm gleaning from all this. I'm growing from all of this. Like so it means a lot to me and I know it'll mean a lot to a lot of people. So thank you for
Yeah.
coming
I
on.
think it's beautiful what you're doing. Like when you said you were doing this podcast, I was like, well, then I was like,
You
please,
were like,
I
please.
would love. I would love because again, like,
Yeah.
I think back on before I was married and I think of like my single girlfriends that are just like, what is going on?
Hmm.
And I'm like, you guys, you're stressing over it, but believe me, God has a plan.
Hmm.
Trust yourselves. You're beautiful human beings, men and women. Like you
Yeah.
are perfectly formed the way God has made you, and you will find someone equally yoked as you. Just take your time, really be intentional,
Hmm.
and again, be friends with that person on a human being level of like, I like, this is my people. Like
Hmm.
this is my people. I mean, because your partner is your people, your community. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And it's the best when you're able to find someone that is different from you yet complements
Hmm.
you, can bring you new experiences that you can bring new experiences to. I think that's another successful thing about our relationship is that we are a lot alike, but very much different, and we learn to complement each
Hmm.
other and partner with each other to really balance each other,
Yeah.
which is what is needed in
Yeah.
this life. You know what I'm saying? To have a
Absolutely.
person that is just like, okay, this is my go-to. I
Hmm.
can really, you know, be myself and be okay with being myself, and they can as well, and we're just in this for the long haul,
Hmm. Yeah,
so
absolutely. I love that. Thank you again. Thank you so much.
thank you.
And we'll hopefully have you on again. That'd be fun to have you on again. Maybe
I would
maybe
love
with you and your
anytime.
husband because I am working on a couple series.
Oh,
So,
oh, that would be interesting because he and I are like, he's a little bit, he blushes a lot when I talk. Like I'm a
oh,
little bit more transparent in our one conversation, but him, like, he's just like, oh, and I'm like,
I
come
love
on,
that.
you give such great insight, and again, he's grown so much as and matured as a
Hmm.
man, like we both have, and as a woman, that I think it's like it's definitely needed in this day and age. Just
Oh,
not a lot of
100%.
marriages that are really, working together and kind of
Yeah.
standing the test of time with each other. So we would love that,
Yeah. And that's what I'm hoping.
So,
I'm throwing it out there now because I'm working on it for next
okay.
year. So I want to
Okay.
bring on because I feel the same way. I'm like we see so much damaged marriages and I'm like I want
Mhm.
to bring people on who we've talked about people who've gone through divorce and the struggles they've had and why, and there's so much wisdom there after. And I
Mhm.
also want to highlight beautiful couples who are like, we're putting in the work.
Mhm.
This is working, and this is what we're learning. So I think it'll be
Yeah.
really cool. But we'll
Oh,
have to
I'm
we'll have to do
excited
some
for you.
convincing to get him on.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I mean, he'll do it because he's like, if you want to,
yeah,
but
okay, good.
for sure, like,
I
let
love
me
it.
know. I love sharing it. It's like, one of the things that I love to share
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
love to bring my perspective on, because I don't know if my perspective is the same of other women out there. But yeah, and I'm very proud of our marriage, most
You
importantly,
should.
and the work that we've done. Yeah,
You definitely should
I'm
be. And
super
your
proud.
kids are going to be such a beautiful example of that as they get
Oh
older
my God.
and as they mature and as they date. And like
Mhm.
that's people don't realize is like the person that you
Yes.
marry, it's like it's going to be imparted on your children and then your children
Mhm.
having children and being married and so on and so forth. So it's not a decision you're only making for today, you're making it for for
For
generations to come. And
absolutely, you
so
hit it spot on.
that's why I think it's so vital for who you marry and the type of marriage that you have because it
Yeah.
impacts more than just you two. And that's the design of it. So
Yeah.
but thank you again. I appreciate
Of
it
course.
so much. And we'll talk soon. Okay.
Mhm.
Bye.
Okay. Take care. Bye.